church right here. But they are a performance chorus, and they're doing the concert that we're going to go see at Carnegie Hall on the 11th. And they're here to talk about that and then work with us on some of our music.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so I have flyers. Do you have flyers? I have flyers for you. So, have you seen these flyers?
No.
Okay. You're in luck. So, these are flyers for the concert. So you know what we're talking about. Sure. Have you seen that?
Oh, yes,
Okay.
come on.
There you go. Okay. So, I am Mark Shapiro. I'm the guy on the right. How's the picture? Is it okay? Okay. They're new, so you always want to know. You know? So, part of what I wanted to do, I'm very interactive, so I don't like to talk at you. I will ask you a lot of questions and have you talk and ask you things. So, first of all, how many of you have been to a classical concert before? Has anybody been to a classical concert before? Okay. And have you been to Carnegie Hall? Okay. So, do you have anything in your mind about what that's going to be right now? Is it going to be boring? Are you worried about that? No. Okay. So, what do you think is going to happen? How is that afternoon? You're showing up a little before 2 o'clock, and then starting at 2 o'clock, what's going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? What's the drill? Any thoughts about that? So music for sure, but I want to a little bit walk you through kind of what happens. So this is a big project. I think we don't have the photo with the orchestra, but this is with orchestra, chorus, and soloists. So, and you know what the orchestra is, right? So tell me some instruments that play in the orchestra. So violin, and that's a member of what family? Strings, right. Okay, so violins. What other string instruments can you think of? Guitar is a good one, although we don't use it for this concert. Cello. Harp we do use, yes. Wonderful player. She's French, Melisa Bonetti is coming to play with us. So and the other one is viola, which everybody always forgets, which is the lower one, and then the big double bass. Right, so the strings will have about 20 of them. So you'll have first and second violins, so they play 2 parts. You'll have viola, cello, bass. Okay? And then, what other families of orchestra instruments can you think of? Horns, which are membered, depending who you ask, either the brass or the winds. What other brass instruments do you know? Trumpet, tuba, and trombone, neither of which we'll be using. So for this concert, horns and trumpets. Or actually just trumpets for this concert. And then what about winds? Flutes? Clarinet? Yeah. Who tunes the orchestra, do you know? Oboe? You know the oboe? As an instrument, right? Oboe gives the A, right? And then bassoon, the big tall one. Right? So we'll have all those people, so that's a lot of very specialized people. Plus a drummer, right? Timpani and some other sounds. So a lot of people to coordinate. Chorus of about 120 on stage. So big chorus. And what voices do you know are in the chorus? Soprano? Alto? Mezzo soprano? Tenor? Bass, you got them all. Okay, excellent. And sometimes the tenor bass divide into 3, so there'll be baritone. Right, so 6 parts in all is what's going to happen. Okay? All right, come on in. If you're coming. Change the part. Come on in. Hello. Hi. Were you improvising?
Yeah.
Okay, how'd it go?
Well, it didn't start.
Okay. Funny thing about improv. Anything can happen. Okay. So we have 2 more of these for you. These are the postcards for the concert. Okay. So what we've established before we got here is that there's a chorus on stage, orchestra on stage, and soloists. You have here pictures of the soloists, who are fantastic. Kirsten Piper Brown is the soprano. What do you think of her picture? These are all glamorous pictures, right? Yeah. So she's a wonderful singer. We have worked together before, And does anybody know what Lincoln Center is? Yeah? Big performing arts place. She had a big starring role in something last year and was nominated for a Tony, which is pretty amazing for a classical singer. So if you think how versatile she is, she's really fantastic. And she, we can send you the link. There's an interview I did with Kristen on Zoom, just to talk about her career and how she trained. She grew up in the South, and I'm here to talk to you about Margaret Bonds in particular, who is this composer. But one of the things that we discovered is that Kirsten's teacher studied with Margaret Bonds. So that's quite a lineage at one remove. Then Melisa Bonetti is Dominican. Anybody know anybody from Dominican Republic? Are you from the Dominican Republic? Okay. So Melisa has discovered that she is the first ever Dominican woman to solo classically at Carnegie Hall.
Wow.
And we're presenting her in that opportunity. So isn't that amazing? Yeah. So she was interested to see if there was anybody who came before her. She's a real member of the Dominican community in New York. She and I have the same management, actually. And yeah, and we started talking, and she decided she wanted to find out if there had been any Dominicans on the stage at Carnegie Hall before her. And there have not. So there was one Dominican tenor who was quite famous, but she's the first one. So she was very excited about that. So that's Melisa Bonetti, and I love Melisa. Aaron Croach is an up-and-coming tenor who's now I think at Curtis. And Markel Reed I've also worked with before. Terrific singer, and I've coached 2 of them so far, and I'll be seeing all 4 of them in my apartment tomorrow. So that's one of the other things that happens backstage is we rehearse together and put this together. So we have these 2 composers, Bach and Bonds. Can you see that they're his face, which is not a photograph? Why not a photograph of Bach? Didn't exist yet, the camera, right? So there were portraits, but Margaret Bonds, picture. Any questions about her or who she was yet? So any thoughts about what century Margaret Bonds is from? What do you think if there's a picture of her? Could be 19, but in her case 20. Right, so she died in the 60s, 72, she died in 1972. Were your parents born yet in 1972? Right, so, no. Okay, actually not. So she's died a little before your parents were born. What about grandparents? Great, okay. So she was still alive when your grandparents were living their lives. Helps you kind of situate that. Her career was a really interesting one. So what do you can see she's black, and she grew up in Chicago. What do you think might have been her experience? She went to Northwestern University. What do you think might have been her experience there? What kind of welcome do you think she might have gotten at Northwestern University? Wasn't much of a welcome, right? So she was very talented, and this was a very certain kind of place, Northwestern at that time, and she had a really tough time. They gave her a really hard time, notwithstanding her very obvious talent. On the other hand, she was the first black woman ever to solo with the Chicago Symphony, and that happened in the 1950s. So I'm a big fan of people who fight the odds and win. And she was really clearly very tough. Does the name Langston Hughes mean anything to any of you? You're all nodding. That's great. You're not nodding. Yeah. So tell us who's Langston Hughes. So funny to hear about the 1900s.
I know.
Yes, I was born in the 1900s. Yes. Okay, it's like, yes, it's in the Peloponnesian War, right? Yeah. Yes, absolutely, he was a black writer in the 20th century, 1900s. He wrote a very famous poem. Anybody know any of his poems? What's in your mind? Did you do anything in English?
So last year, sophomore year, I'm not sure.
Not remembering right now? So he has a very famous poem called The Negro Speaks of Rivers. Anybody heard that one? So she read that poem in the basement of Northwestern University in the library, and she says, it saved my life. So she sought him out, and they became very close friends and collaborators. And they lived together in New York, and they may have been more than friends, but she did have a husband, so she was very, very unhappy when he died. He died 5 years before her, and she never really got over that. So they wrote a number of pieces together, including the one you're going to hear, which is called Ballad of the Brown King. So why the Brown King? What's the point? So what do you know in your stories about Christmas of kings at Christmas? Any stories come to mind? Yeah.
They had like a very very big feast.
Say more.
They had a very big feast.
A big feast. Anybody know do you know We Three Kings? You know that carol? So you know something about kings and Christmas, right? Okay, so think about that carol, Three Kings, right? What's the story of that carol? If you think through the words, do you remember the words? We three kings of Orient are traveling. We traveled afar, field and fountain. Why did they travel? To see Jesus, who was a baby. There you go. Okay, right? So they came to see the baby, and they saw the star in the east. They saw, you see in the Christmas iconography, you see that star in the sky, and they followed that star to see the baby. So Langston Hughes, there is some possibility in the way some of the stories are told in the Bible that one of the kings was black. And Langston Hughes got very interested in that idea, as did Margaret Bonds. Why do you think that is? Say what? It's not mentioned much, and
I guess the Bible has always been like they portray Jesus as white too.
Right.
He was in the Middle East. That's geographically spoken.
right. So the idea here is that there was for people like Bonds and Hughes living in the United States in the 20th century, the idea that one of the three kings was black was really powerful. And it is that question of, do I belong as part of this story? Is there room for me here? And as a largely white chorus, we're really asking ourselves that question. And the idea being, anybody has that question of, do I belong? Is there a place for me here? So what interested them in Ballad of the Brown King is telling this story. Now, when they wrote Ballad of the Brown King, it was really successful. It was televised, and that was a big deal in the 1950s. So Margaret Bonds wrote a letter to Langston Hughes and said, Langston, you and I had a triumph this Christmas, and our music deserves to be heard next to Bach and Handel. So Cecilia Chorus, whose music director I am, we didn't know that when we programmed this piece last year. We found this letter like 2 days before our concert. And as it happened, we were doing Margaret Bonds music with music by Handel. What do you know by Handel, if anything? You know the Hallelujah Chorus?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's Handel, right? Okay. So we did this music of Handel with Bonds, and we decided this year we're going to fulfill her dream and do her music with music by Bach. So think about why she would have wanted to be side by side with these other great composers. She really wanted a certain kind of recognition of her talent. And she wanted this company of people who were recognized as great composers in many parts of the world. And that her own music uses echoes. Do you know that you said you know the Hallelujah Chorus, so you know of it? Do you know that it goes Hallelujah, Hallelujah? Does that ring a bell? Yeah. So when you hear the Bonds, you'll hear that her music does exactly the same thing. She borrows Hallelujah, Hallelujah. It's in her ear. And you don't know if it's conscious or not, but it's there. So she really wanted to be in this kind of context. So one of the things that I do as a conductor and that we do as an organization is we put together programs where the pieces that are together in the program, the togetherness tells a story. So that's part of what's going on. The way we're doing the program is we're kind of giving Margaret Bonds a hug by music of Bach. So we're starting with Bach and finishing with Bach, and her piece is in the middle. So why these three pieces? The Christmas oratorio is a piece by Bach. While we're talking about Bach, who is this guy? What century did he live in? Anybody know? If you had to guess. 16th, okay. He's a little later. Yeah, there you go, 18th century, right? Bach is 18th century. What century was this country established? 1776, right? It's a show on Broadway now, right? Okay, 1776, which is about the founding of the country. What century is 1776? 18th, right? So just to help you get a sense of how this all is organized. So Bach died in 1750. How many years before the founding of this country? A little math problem? Yeah, great, okay. You're good at this. Okay, so Bach died just 26 years before this country was established. Always helpful to think of those connections, right? And he was old, so he was born in 1685. So he started working mainly in the 17th, he was mainly a 17th century composer. When was the French Revolution? Close to ours, right? 1789. Okay, great. Just a little, I always like to throw in a little history. Yeah. Okay, so Bach was an 18th century composer and is widely regarded as sort of the ancestor of all Western music because he was so ingenious and he wrote so much and he really made the rule book that somebody like Margaret Bonds would have been interested in, both as a composer and as a pianist. So what I thought it would be interesting to do together was to look a little bit of the text of Margaret Bonds and then say, if you were a composer, what kind of music would you try? And then let's see what she did. Okay, so we'll do just a couple of phrases like that. So you know, this is what a score looks like, right? So the conductor is reading all kinds of extra things and keeping everything together. So Margaret Bonds has gone to Langston Hughes. Who's Langston Hughes? Her great friend and a poet, right? Okay. And he gives her this line to start the piece. Of the three wise men who came to the king, one was a brown man, so they say. Okay, I'm going to read it, ask you to repeat it. Of the three wise men who came to the king, one was a brown man, so they say. Okay, so what do you notice about the verse? Does it rhyme? Let's do it together again. Of the three wise men who came to the king, one was a brown man, so they say. Does it rhyme? No. I mean, let's vote. No. Who votes no? Who votes yes? You have to vote. You have to vote! If you learn nothing else from me today, right?
Yes.
Your vote counts. You have to vote. Okay. Yes. So, do king and sing rhyme?
Yes.
So therefore the poem rhymes? Right? Okay. So he wrote her a rhyming poem. What else? What kind of language is he using? Is it fancy words? Not really, right? The words are all short, right? So that sets up a certain kind of feeling. Let's count together. Of the three wise men, do that with me.
Of the three wise men
Who came to the king,
one
was a brown man, so they say. Okay, so how many syllables in each line? Go ahead. 5, 5, 5, 3, right? So think for your composer, the rhythmic structure that somebody gives you is really important. 5, 5, 5, 3. Okay, so somewhere in her mind she's thinking, okay, that's what I have to work with. Right? 5, 5, 5, 3, 5 beats, 5 beats, 5 beats, 5 beats, 3 beats. Now, let's say you're Margaret Bonds. You have this text that your friend Langston sent to you. What sort of music do you think you want to compose? What sort of mood? What do you think it will be? Is it very bright and happy? Is it very slow and sad? What would you do? I think this is the challenge that she had, right? She had to sit down at her desk. And by the way, were there computers then in 1955? Not for normal people like you and me and Margaret Bonds. Only gigantic things at General Electric, right? So she had to do it all with a pencil. And she had to sit down at her desk and say, okay, probably at her piano also, what am I going to do? By the way, I meant to mention, after finishing Northwestern, she worked in Chicago for a while, working at nightclubs and accompanying dance classes, and then she moved to Harlem. And she lived the rest of her life in Harlem, so right around here. Okay. Great, as did Langston. So, back to her. So what are you thinking of the three wise men who came to the king? One was a brown man, so they sing. What do you picture? If you had to sing something, make something up, go ahead. What would you do? Of the three wise men, what would you do? If you're making up a song, improvising something. You just came from improv class. Oh, you didn't? No, you didn't, right? I thought you both did. Okay. You came from improv, right? So if you're doing musical improv, what would you do? Any thoughts? Make something up. I'll give you 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3.
I mean,
Yeah, go ahead.
how it sounds is like the narrator probably saying something.
Great.
It sounds a little bit, because, since today I didn't know there was a brown person.
Right.
So I guess that introduction will give a vibe of
Fantastic.
the rest
Okay.
of the story.
Let's see if she did that. So I'm going to play a little of it for you on the piano. So what's your name? Alisa? Adisa. Did everyone hear what Adisa said? Right? The introduction, I think it's a really smart observation. It's a kind of narrative, right? Storytelling, setting the stage for what's happening. And there's also, what are the three wise men doing? By the way, what vehicle are they on? Camel, right? Not a, right. Is it a Volkswagen? A Tesla? No. They're on camels, right? So there's going to be some feeling, I think, joining up with what Adisa said, that there will be a feeling of the kind of journey that this is, right? So there will be some feeling of motion in the music that gives you sets the mood of storytelling, and in particular of travel by camel. So if we're thinking travel by camel, how many of you have been on a camel? You have, and you have. How fast did it go? Slow, right? Can they go fast?
Understood. It was being controlled by someone else.
Right. I think they probably can, but I think with people on them, they don't. Right? Because among other things, what do you have on a camel? You have all your stuff. Right? So you have yourself, and then you have your stuff. So do you think, with that feeling that we've been talking about, will the music be fast? Right? So there'll be a kind of calmness to it, maybe. Also, what time of day is it if there's an evening star in the sky? Right. So think that you might expect the music to reflect a little bit the time of day. And then, as you said, there's some fishiness in the story about many things, including time of year. But certainly traditionally in our culture, what time of year is it for Christmas? Winter. So is it going to be very hot? Have you ever thought about what the weather was when the wise men went to see the baby? So something to think about, right? Was it hot? Were they in t-shirts or were they in parkas? Okay, so that you're always trying to imagine and connect. So this is what she came up with, and I want to ask you some things about it. So she has this. I'm going to play that again. That's sort of the tune and the harmony. So I have a couple questions for you, and this depends how much. Have you been having some music theory and stuff like that? A little bit?
Oh, a lot of them not since freshman year.
Okay. Do you remember, did you study what a leading tone is? Does that ring any bells? No?
Seniors did, not the freshmen.
Okay. So if I play a scale, let's say I play a major scale. Okay, this note is the leading tone. Right, so. And it has a certain tendency and feeling. I can play a minor scale where I add a leading tone. But I can also play a minor scale where I don't have a leading tone. How does the feeling change for you without the leading tone? There's difference from. So there's a kind of long language in music theory about mode and the feeling of being not in the West. But her ear went right there, and a word you may or may not know, pentatonic. Anybody ever heard that word? Yes? So you know that word? Yeah. So her ear has gone somewhere pentatonic, which to me is really interesting. I am sure if you asked her, she would not say that was conscious. I think she found it as a way of thinking of where the story is and the kind of movements and feeling she wanted to project. So, this idea, you feel what in music we call a pickup. Is that a word you know? So it's something that leads to the downbeat. So it's a feeling of motion. And then this ornament, which I hear as communicating this feeling of movement and storytelling. I'm going to ask you to sing that back as I play it. So I'll play it first. You say. I'm going to play it again, and be brave. Do you like it as a tune? Right? It's very pleasing, and she had a real gift for memories. I don't know if you know this expression, earworm, but things that really stick in your ear. Right? So we listen to that again. Ask you to sing that back. Great. Then there's more we could say about the opening, but I want to do the big tune. So of the three wise men who came to the king, one was a brown man, so they say. This is what she does. So, do you know the word tonic? No. Okay, so that's the home key, right? Then she goes to a major place. And she's still thinking this pentatonic. It's really in her ear, so. Of the three wise men who came to the king, one was a brown man, so they sing. I want to point out something about that. So we'll sing it together once, me first, then you. Of the three wise men who came to the king, one was a brown man, so they sing. Let's go ahead. Of the three wise men who came to the king, so if you go up there, you should feel free. So I want to mention one other idea, and then we can do some other work. But if you're, what do you notice about the way she treats "So They Sing"? Goes lower. Excellent. Okay, what else? And slower, excellent. I'm looking for one other thing. So she goes, one was a brown man, so they sing. Syncopated. Do you know this word? You know it.
Complicated rhythms.
Okay, so have they studied syncopation? Not really?
No.
Okay, so syncopation is when something happens between the beats. It's a simple explanation. But if you go, so they sing, do that with me and snap and sing. So they sing. Let's do that again. So they sing. So that's the unsyncopated version. Then she sticks that between the beats. So they sing. Let's do it syncopated.
So they sing.
Let's do it unsyncopated.
So they sing.
Let's syncopate it.
So
they sing. Okay. Let's unsyncopated. Let's do it syncopated. Here we go. So. No, unsyncopated. Here we go. Go up. So they sing. Syncopated. Unsyncopated. So they sing. Syncopated. So they sing. So there's a difference, right? Sorry, I might have said it backwards. Yeah. Okay. So whenever we talk about music and these kind of points that we notice, as a conductor, I want to think, why? What is expressive about it? Because in a concert, you want to have some sense of not only listening to the music passively, but you're really thinking, syncopation. You don't have to say that out loud to yourself, but you sort of feel something. So what is the, so they sing, what does that do for you, the syncopation? How does that make you, what is in it? What's the difference expressively if you were texting your friends and you went, so they sing, let's do that, pretend you're texting. So they sing, or so they sing, what's the difference? Yeah.
One seems more upbeat than the other.
Okay, so one is more cheerful. Yeah.
Gives more emphasis.
Adds emphasis.
Makes it more interesting.
More interesting. Yeah. I think she's also taking a point of view. Have you ever done scare quotes when you talk to your friends? Could you do that, please? Have you done that ever? No, but you know what it means, right? Hello? Yeah, do that. Hello? Right, there's a kind of, so they sing. Right, there's a kind of way in sound that she is making you hear this. That's how I hear that. She's kind of, so they sing, so do that. So they sing, as opposed to so they sing, where I don't hear that. Right, but she's going, so they sing. She's hearing a lot of people. She's hearing the poet, she's hearing the story that's in the Bible, and there is that reference to the Ethiopian king. Okay, so we could talk about this for hours, right? So, I love what I do, I'm very lucky to do that. So, but I wanted to introduce kind of the challenge that somebody like her is dealing with, all right? Her friend Langston Hughes wrote this text, and she felt, by the way, I learned a really interesting story just last week. Anybody heard of ASCAP? You know ASCAP?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it stands for the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, ASCAP. It's the big professional organization for people who publish in this country. In the 1950s, she proposed her candidacy 3 times for ASCAP, and they rejected her twice. They would not let her in. Third time, they let her in. And then they let her in as a kind of second-class member, and then they accepted her as a full-class member in 1955. Now, there's a wonderful story. I don't suppose you would know the name Leontine Price. Do you know that name? Yeah. Unbelievable American soprano. Yeah. I mean, just unbelievable singer. who I hope maybe you can demonstrate, give me some, but look her up on YouTube, I mean, just a goddess of a singer. They were friends. And Leontine Price sang a great deal of Margaret Bonds' music in performance and commissioned it, meaning she paid Margaret Bonds to write things for her. And they had a correspondence, and Margaret Bonds said, told her, I went to my first ASCAP meeting, I went to this meeting. There were very few women, so she had that, and I was the only, and this was her phrase, colored woman. I was the only one. And she was really aware of it. And she was aware that at the time there were only 3 in the whole organization, and of course people lived all over the country. So she was really a pioneer. And she said in that letter to Leon Price, this makes me feel a great, well, if you were her, what would you feel about that? What would you feel before I tell you what she said she felt? Yeah.
I feel like it's a sense of accomplishment. Like you're the first one there, especially as a woman and a person of color. But it's a little disappointing to see that there's no one there with you.
Okay, great. Do you all agree with that? Would you add anything? So she wrote, I feel a great sense of responsibility. She felt it as a burden to really, she had to work that much harder under that kind of pressure to really show who she was and what she could do. So this piece was one of her biggest public successes. And it was performed a lot in the 1950s and early 60s, then it disappeared. And then in the last couple of years, there's a fellow conductor in New York named Malcolm Merriweather, who made an arrangement and recorded it, and that helped kind of bring it back. And we are actually performing Malcolm's arrangement in Carnegie Hall. Last year we did her version. But another thing that happens to composers is their publishers don't help them if they're dead because they won't make any money. So her publisher still owned her music, but kind of sat on it. And even Malcolm, the rights to do this are very complicated. So I thought we'd look at one other thing, and then maybe you can sing something, and I guess we're done. Right? Okay. So the next line is, they brought fine gifts of silver and gold. You know that part of the story, right? Okay. So if we just say that, what kind of music do you think this is going to be? They brought fine gifts of silver and gold. Right, okay. You can talk with your hands, right? You don't have to find it. It's going to be very this kind of music. And indeed, that's what she wrote. Listen to the harmony. So there's the kind of narrative thing that Adisa was talking about that starts, right? And then they brought five gifts of silver. And then listen to this harmony. That's the chorus singing, they brought gifts. Of silver and gold. I mean, she's really going to town in this kind of Radio City harmony, right? It's really great. So that's a bit of an introduction. The time goes so fast. You guys are great to talk to. So do you have any, then I'll say, so you'll hear Bach, and one of the things that is interesting about Bach is a lot of his music is surprisingly rebellious. So he worked really inside the Lutheran Church, which was not known for being a lot of laughs. Very, kind of environment. And he has a text in the Magnificat, De posuit potentes de sede, which is Latin. The powerful will be thrown from their seat. So even then, and even in this biblical text, there is a kind of liberation theology there about making justice in the world. And it's very interesting to me to see how these pieces fit together in that spirit. So much more one could say, but let's hear you sing something. So can we do the Angel Gabriel?
Yes.
And I want to talk about that. Yeah.
The reminder is open to the Angel Gabriel.
You want to lead them in that?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
You do the name on it.
Here, it's here.
Okay, so. Do you want me to play? Okay. Okay, so.
Oh, yeah. All right, Angel gave me the best.
Okay, we're going to sing 2 phrases.
Okay. All right.
Okay, shall I start?
Yeah.
You want to start me?
Yeah. Let's all sing everybody sing the first verse and the second verse. Okay?
Okay. We'll just do a couple of phrases, I think.
Okay. One.
So, yeah, count me off. 1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, ready, and.
This is the intro.
The angel Gabriel from heaven came, with wings as shifted snow, with eyes as flame.
Great. So I love this carol. It has something really special about it. Can you tell what it is? So what I want you to do, you know it by heart, right, this line? Yes, okay. So count beats on your finger as you sing. When you sing music in general, things are grouped into how many beats in your experience? 4 and 8, right? By and large. Now I'll do this one. The angel, you ready? The angel
Gabriel from heaven came, with wings as shifted snow, with eyes as flame.
So how many beats is this one grouped into? 7. It's a 7-beat tune. It is so cool. Let's do that again. Okay? It's a 7-beat tune. That's so rare. Right? So how wonderful that you're getting to do it. Okay? Let's do it again.
The angel Gabriel from heaven came, with wings as shifted snow, with eyes as flame.
Great. So again, I think knowledge is really powerful in this kind of thing of understanding that it's 7. So imagine, let's see, if you could stand up. This isn't the ideal space for this. But if you could take sort of 7 small steps in one direction and then change direction as you sing. So here we go. The angel Gabriel from heaven came, his wings had drifted snow, with eyes of flame. Can you feel how great it feels to shift after 7 beats? Is that doing anything for you? It's very cool. I think if your whole diet has been 4 and 8 beats, and then you're suddenly like somebody serves you up a dessert, excuse me, of 7 beats. That's so fresh. Okay, so I think that's a good place to stop actually. It's 4:20, I promised to stop at 4:20. So you've been really fun. Yeah, so it'll be great to see you. I'll wave at you from the stage, and I hope you'll enjoy the concert and that it won't be the last. Okay, thanks so much for your hospitality.
Yeah. Maybe you'll write us something about your impressions, like that would be nice to get a letter or something from like what people noticed and how, about the piece.
Like a small a review?
What?
A review of the concert?
Yeah, well, just impressions, it doesn't have to be formal.
Okay.
We're scared of reviews. So. Don't want to review.